Welcome to all techies. I'm Pankaj Rai, and in today's tutorial I'm going to talk about how can you add a sentiment analysis to your app built with Jetpack Compose. Well, have you ever been in a situation where when user try to give a review or comment on something, you might want to know about the sentiment of the user so as to understand it whatever user is commenting on or sending the reviews, is it a positive or negative? Well, later on you may use it for the analytics purpose, but that is one such step which you can do once you analyze the sentiment of the user. The first and foremost question is how to even do that? Well, the simplest answer is using machine learning. But how tough it is? Well, let's check out in today's video. So first, head over to build.grid. Add the dependency for MediaPipe. MediaPipe task-text is useful to classify the text with a positive or the negative sentiment. So we are going to use the text classification feature of MediaPipe. And using that, we are going to analyze the sentiment of the user, and then we are just going to show it on the screen. But in reality, in your production grade application, you may use it for any other purpose. So let's check out how easy it is to add text classification, nothing but sentiment analysis to your app. So let's create a composable. Let me name this as text classification demo. Now the first thing which we need to do is to have the TF-Lite model with us, because as I said, we are going to use machine learning here. So for doing on-device machine learning, I'll need the TF-Lite model. So I have it here. I have kept it inside the assets folder, and I'll also give link in the description so that you could directly download this model. Well, there are multiple ways to deal with this. Either you put it in assets, or you host it somewhere, download it on the fly, and then pass the path here. Or probably you may use Firebase service to host this and then download it on the fly. But it all depends on your use case. Eventually, if you have to take my recommendation, then I will not recommend having this in the assets folder, because having this kind of model in assets folder is going to increase the app size. The best option is to host it somewhere and then download it on the fly based on the need. Okay, so for the demo purpose, I have downloaded it. I kept it in the assets folder. Now the first thing that I need to do is to specify the model path. So for that, let's create a base options builder. And let's put it inside. Remember, because we do not want this to get initialized each and every time during recomposition. So here we'll say base options dot builder dot set model asset path. Because we have put it in the asset, so we need not have to provide the entire path. Just the name of this model is sufficient. So let's copy the name of this and then paste it here. Okay, now the next is, let's create the text classifier. So we'll say, well, text classifier equals to remember. Again, because we do not want to reinitialize this each and every time during recomposition, then we'll have base option. So using the base options builder, we can build this. Then let's have the options builder. Well, we need this because this is the place where we are going to pass the base option. So on the text classifier, I can pass on this base option. So text classifier dot text classifier options dot builder dot set base options. Let's set the base options here. Finally, from because again it's options builder, so let's have the options object directly. So for that we can just say options builder dot build. Well, so far it's very straightforward. We had the base option builder. Using this we have created the base option. In a similar way we created the options builder, and then using this option builder we created option. Now just need to pass this to text classifier. So text classifier dot create from options. It requires context and options. Well, for context, let's create an object here. Local context equals to local context dot current, and I can say this as local context. That's it. So here we are providing the TF-Lite model, and then we have created the text classifier too. Well, that's it. Only these two is sufficient. Now, whenever I want to classify the text either to positive or negative sentiment, I can directly use this text classifier. So this text classifier actually have an option to provide input text with a method classify. So when I call classifier and provide some text here like hello, how are you, then it's going to provide me the options where I can get this information that whether this sentiment is positive or negative. But there's one catch here. You may not want to do this on a main thread, because whenever you do any machine learning operation, it's advised to put those heavy tasks in the background thread. So how can we do that with Jetpack Compose? Well, for that we have coroutine. So let's create a coroutine object. We'll say remember coroutine scope, and after that, so let's create a small UI, and then I am going to call text classifier dot classify, pass on the text which I'm going to provide in the editable field, and then I'll show the result on the UI whether the sentiment is positive or negative. So let's create a very simple basic UI. So we'll have column. Let this column to occupy the entire size and having a padding of say 24 dp all around the corners. Then inside this, let's have outlined text field where I can provide say message by remember mutable state of empty. So let's import the get and set method on remember. Get value and set value. That's it. Then I can pass on message here. Message equals to it. That's it. Also let it occupy the entire width, so we'll provide a modifier fill max width. Now right below this, let's have a button. On a button click, we'll try to analyze the sentiment of the user. Let's have text here. So the button text which says classify text. And finally let's show the result right below this button. So in order to show the result, let's have another object. So result by remember mutable state of, and we can have this as result. Also let's have spaces between both of them. So we'll say vertical arrangement is arrangement dot spaced by say 16 dp, and additional space for this, so we'll add spacer say 36 dp. This is just to push down the final result a bit extra than the normal space between the outline text field and button. Okay, so this was a very simple basic UI part. Now if you remember, then I've talked about that only these two was sufficient to classify the text. So let's see how to use text classifier to get the result. So on a button click, I can say text classifier dot classify. It requires the input text, and input text is a place where I can pass on the message object. This message object is nothing but whatever user is going to enter in the outline text field, it will have that information. Again, if you remember, then if you are doing ML task, then it's not ideal to have it on a foreground thread. So let's push this to background thread. For that we are going to use Kotlin scope dot launch, and let's use the dispatchers dot default. Now inside this we can have text classifier dot classify. Then we can say about classification result dot classifications. Now if you see, the classification is going to give me the list of classifications. Eventually this list of classification is going to provide me with again classification where I'll have the categories, a category for the positive and negative. So for every input that I'm passing on, I'm going to get both of them, both with a positive and negative category, but the score will differ. So whichever is going to have the highest score, it means that the input field correlates to that sentiment. For example, when I say about the classification with a category say positive as 0.89 and negative as 0.11, then it means that the text is with positive sentiment. And we are interested in the first classification, so let's say about first or null. Now I have this as a classification. Inside this classification, what I can do is classification dot categories dot let. So let's have categories here. This is nothing but the list of categories here. So I can say like categories dot for each. Now this is nothing but the category. What I can do is that I can say about category dot category name. This is going to give me whether it's positive, negative. Then I can also say about the category dot score. Category dot score is going to give the value whether it's the one which I was saying, like 0.1, 0.10, 20, value ranging from 0 to 1. That means this is going to show us the percentage. So which one is going to have the highest percentage, you can select that as the category of the sentiment. So when the score says 0.80 and the category name says positive, then it means that the text should be of positive sentiment. And a similar way we get for the negative too. And so by using the score, we should identify that which one is having the highest value. Here in this example, as you can see, that positive is having the higher value and negative is having the lowest value. So it means that the sentiment is positive. Now what we should do is, because we are iterating through the category, so for one time I'm going to get the positive, for the other time I'm going to get the negative. So let me do one thing. Let me create an object for positive score with the default value of 0 and negative score with the default value of 0. Now inside this I can say like if category dot category name equals positive, and ignore the case, then positive score is going to be category dot score, else negative score is equals to category dot score, because category dot score is going to provide the float value. As I said, it's going to range from 0.0 to 1.0. So let's make it round to int. Now as we have the value for the positive and negative score, let's determine the text classification as positive or negative based on the value comparison. So here we can say if positive score is greater than negative score, then I can say this as positive, else negative. Let's have this assigned to the result object, and finally you may see that we are reading the result in the text composable, so we are going to get the proper result right below this button. So let's run and check this out now. Well, here is our very basic UI with an outline text field and a button. Now let's try to check out whether this is working properly or not. Let me put a negative comment first, and then we'll try out with a positive one. So I have a message: I had a terrible experience at this restaurant. When I click on classify text, you can see that it's classifying this as negative. And now let's try out with some positive comment. So let's check out one more comment, and when I click on classify text, you can see this, it has changed to positive. So adding text classification, or in other words adding sentiment analysis, is as easy as adding a text classifier and then calling text classifier dot classify. That's it. Now before I conclude this tutorial, there's one more thing which I want to talk about. Categories dot for each, whatever you have seen here, now this is just for the basic understanding. In case if you are aware about the Kotlin features, then you may completely avoid writing all these things, creating a temporary object and then running for each, thereafter doing an if comparison, and then finally storing in the result object. Well, if I have to do the same, then I would have used the collection method. So the simplest approach could have been here is categories dot max by. Now this is going to give me the category. If you see this logic, then basically my overall idea is to get the maximum among the score for the positive and negative. So here I can directly say that max by category dot score, and this is going to give me a category. Which I can directly use to set the result. So I can say result equals to category dot category name. That's it. And just by these two lines of code, I can avoid writing for each, then two objects, and then the comparison two. Let's check out this two. Let me remove all these things. And simplify the code with max by. Let's rerun and check this out. Let's paste some positive text here, and you can see the category is positive. Well, code is heavily simplified by using the collection method. That's it for this video. If you like this video, then please do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe this channel. Also, if you're going to use the text classification in your app, then do write down in the comment section that where you're going to use this and why. Is it for analytics or for app related feature? Thank you and stay tuned.